folks, let's jump into it. The 2020 Texas Longhorns Season Awards. I know this is a little bit late, throwing this out at about mid-January, but I wanted to kind of wait to see where all of the aftermath settled down after Tom Herman's firing and, the transfers and early signing day, and just kind of help put all this kind of into context as well. And to see what, Sam decided to do and all that type of stuff. So I'm going to run through this pretty quick. First award is Special Teams Player of the Year. So I went with Deshaun Jameson. And looking at just kind of what he put together this year, nearly 700 total yards in kick and punt return, total. Obviously, he was the main number one kick returner, but then also had some duties as a punt returner as well. And then he had that one touchdown against Texas Tech, where it was, I think it was like a 95-yard touchdown. But I thought he was great and really, really made an impact, in enough games to where you could look at some of his returns and say, look back at that and say, he set that entire drive up. With this Special Teams Player of the Year, I really looked at Dicker the kicker as well. He had, I believe he missed one extra point. I think he was like 50 of 51 extra points, and then made about 75% of his field goals, which isn't really good. In college, I think that college kickers, you just expect more inconsistency, but I think Cameron Dicker is better than that. So I think when it came to field goals, he actually kind of took a step back. But overall, I think he still had a good season. Still nailed some long kicks. But I think in terms of special teams impact, definitely had to go with Deshaun Jameson this year. All right, next up, I did a Coach of the Year, and I went with Chris Ash. Definitely wasn't going to go with Tom Herman, but, again, I've said this many times on this channel and on the Facebook page and at TexasHornsFans.com, but given the fact that the vast majority of this coaching staff was brand new for 2020, and they didn't get to have a spring ball, they didn't get to have a spring game, they did not have a normal summer workout program, and yes, no program, no school did either, but this is a whole new coaching staff. This is all new coordinators. Guys, if those of you who have ever played know how important it is to develop a relationship with your coaches and to develop that trust between players and coaches. And I think with the improvement that the defense showed in the second half of the season, really stood out to me more so than any other part of the team. Really thought that the defensive line had a really terrific second half of the season, obviously led by Joseph Osai, but overall, just in terms of the coach that impressed me the most, particularly with improving, was definitely Chris Ash. All right, Comeback Player of the Year, I've got Josh Moore. I've said this before about him on here. Just so proud of him and the second chance that he was given and that he took advantage of. He pretty much missed he did miss all of last year, not being kicked off the team, but, basically being suspended for getting into some trouble after his freshman season. And, coming back in his third year in the program, still as a sophomore, but really, I thought, took advantage of that second chance, really stepped up, owned up to the mistakes that he made and just took advantage of it. And really remember from the first play of the season, right? The first play from scrimmage, Sam hits Josh Moore on a 75-yard touchdown. So he finished the season with 30 catches for 472 yards, averaging 15.7 yards per catch with 9 touchdowns. So about a third of all of his catches were touchdowns, which was really cool to see. He definitely disappeared, I think, in the middle of the season. Not to say that was all his fault. There were just a ton of questionable offensive personnel decisions and play calls throughout the entire year, where guys that were obviously hot, catching fire, then you didn't see them for 2 drives. So just a lot of weird stuff going on with the offensive personnel play calling. But, still a really solid season by Josh Moore, especially considering that, you had another, Brennan Eagles was, kind of flanking him on the other outside wide receiver spot. And then, kind of mixing in an offense with 5-star guys like Jake Smith and Jordan Whittington. So it was just really cool to see Josh take advantage of that. So definitely my comeback player of the year. All right, next, rookie of the year. Definitely Bijan. The thing about Bijan early on that I saw was, he looked like what we expected him to look. He just needed to get his timing down. And I definitely think he did that toward the second half of the season. Getting his timing down with his offensive line, how he would hit the hole, when he would make that decision to turn on that burst. And man, he just showed that he's got everything in his bag. He has burst, he has strength, he has top-end speed, and he has agility. I mean, we saw spin moves, jukes, stiff arms, running away from guys, avoiding tackles, finishing his run strong. For the season, Bijan wrapped up with 86 carries and 899 yards total, including receiving yards. I believe his receiving yards were around 190. But he did have 8.2 yards per carry and 6 total touchdowns, rushing and receiving. And the stat that stands out to me without question is that 8.2. I mean, you're looking at 3 to 3.5 yards per carry better than what we've seen, in the past from Keontae Ingram and even Roschon Johnson. So, without question, Rookie of the Year, and really ended up being, maybe the best, the most productive all-around offensive skill player of the running backs and receivers. I mean, 1 yard away from 900 total yards. That's awesome. But again, going back to that offensive personnel decisions, for whatever reason, kind of disappeared at times. Even in the Alamo Bowl against Colorado, he looks phenomenal and is averaging like an insane, I don't know, what was it, like 17 yards per carry, and then he disappeared in the second quarter. He wasn't hurt, so I don't know. Having said that, just kind of thinking about what more we may have gotten from Bijan. So, without question, planted his flag as the unquestioned number one running back on this program going into next year. So, hopefully, we see these numbers. Double. All right. Next up is Defensive Player of the Year. I really don't think there's any question here. Other guys had really good seasons, but went with Osai. Didn't have nearly as many total tackles as he did last year. Now, yes, given they played significantly fewer games, but he did have as many tackles for loss and sacks. So what we saw from Osai this year was just much more efficiency and I think overall just a bigger impact. So thought thought he was awesome. I loved the way Chris Ash used him as that hybrid defensive end outside linebacker. But pretty much his number one mission was to cause havoc in the backfield. And he's built to be exactly that type of player. He was just an absolute monster against Oklahoma State. And, looking back at that game after we did the review, I said something like, he made more impact plays in that game than most elite defensive players do in 3 games. So, overall, I definitely think stood out as the defensive player of the year, not just in his play and impact, but I think also in his leadership. He really stepped up in his junior year to be kind of the unquestioned leader on defense, which was really cool to see. So, and just hearing him in press conferences and hearing what his coaches and teammates say about him, he's absolutely that type of guy, which to me, that makes a massive impact and something that should be considered as well. And definitely, I think projects well as a pass rusher in the NFL. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. In terms of some other guys, though, that stood out, thought Chris Brown had a really good year at safety. Josh Thompson moving to cornerback, I thought was good. And then DeMarvion Overshown moving from defensive back to linebacker, I thought he just got better and better as the year went on. Man, he looks like just an awesome natural outside linebacker who can run all over the field, who kind of has defensive back speed and agility, but more so the size and length of an outside linebacker. So was really impressed by him through the season as well. All right, last one. Offensive Player of the Year, had to go with Sam. I don't think any other individual player meant more to this team, especially to this offense, than Sam. His completion percentage dropped a bit. I think he had about 65% completion last year, finished with 60.2% passes completed this year with 2,566 passing yards, 26 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions. He also had 377 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. So, I hate that his Texas career ends without at least a conference championship. I definitely think his signature win is the Sugar Bowl win over Georgia, but he did decide to not pick up that extra year of eligibility next year, so he's off to the NFL. If he gets drafted, where I see him going in the draft, definitely later round pick, if at all. But looking back at Sam's Texas career is certainly another video of its own. But I don't think any Texas fan would argue that he's without question, by far and away, the best, most effective, and most productive quarterback leader that we've seen since Colt McCoy 10 years ago. So, not much else to say about this kid. He's exactly the type of leader that you want representing your program. I think at times he put too much pressure on himself. I think at times the coaches expected too much of him. And who knows how the change to Mike Yurcich, coming in as an offensive coordinator, muddled things up, or he wasn't able to implement as much as he wanted to. And then, losing Colin Johnson and Devin Duvernay to the NFL, I think affected some things. But, there were definitely times where Sam looked off. Some of that, I think, was due to injury. And then some of that may just have been that he was just not having a good game. But more often than not this year, he was there when it mattered most. and I think did as much as he could. But I don't think there's any question that he's the offensive player of the year on this team. Anyway, that's all I got, guys. Leave your comments below. Let me know who your picks are. Definitely don't forget to check us out at TexasHornsFans.com, link in the description. And also don't forget to subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any videos. And we will see ya on the next one, and also see ya on the Facebook page as well. Hook 'em.